My name is Elaine Murphy, and at 32, I thought I had my family figured out. I'd worked hard, built a career in tech, and sent money home to Franklin, Tennessee to keep everyone afloat. But last month, at a family dinner, everything I believed about loyalty shattered. My parents, my sister, they looked me in the eye and said, "Nobody needs your money, or you." The words hit like a slap, their voices cold, unified. My sister nodded along, her smirk cutting deeper than the insult. The room froze, forks clinking awkwardly, but I didn't say a word. I just sat there staring at my untouched plate while their betrayal sank in. I'd paid for their house repairs, my sister's SUV, her fancy clothing store, yet here they were spitting in my face. I could have screamed, walked out, or thrown their hypocrisy back at them. Instead, I stayed silent, my mind racing with what I'd do next, things they'd never see coming. What kind of family turns on you like that? And what would you do if your own blood made you feel worthless? Stick around, because what I did changed everything. If you're as shocked as I was, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss how this unfolds. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Growing up in Franklin, Tennessee, Sheila and I were close until life pulled us apart. Our small town was all picket fences and church potlucks, but behind closed doors our family struggled. Dad was a mechanic, always covered in grease, working long hours at his auto shop. Mom stayed home, stitching quilts to sell at local craft fairs, barely making ends meet. When I was 12 and Sheila was 10, recession hit hard. Dad's shop lost customers and bills piled up. I'd hear them arguing at night, their voices sharp through thin walls, worrying about losing the house. Sheila would crawl into my bed, her big eyes scared, asking if we'd be okay. I'd hug her tight, promising I'd always take care of her. That promise stuck with me, heavy like a stone. School became my escape. I buried myself in books, aced every test, and stayed up late studying by flashlight to avoid bothering Sheila. Teachers noticed, pushing me toward math and computers. By high school, I was winning coding competitions, dreaming of a bigger world. Sheila was different. She loved art, sketching dresses in her notebooks, charming everyone with her laugh. While I obsessed over grades, she planned school dances and dated boys. I envied her ease, but I never let it show. My focus was getting us out of that cramped house, making sure Sheila never felt the fear of those recession years again. At 18, I earned a full scholarship to Vanderbilt studying computer science. Leaving Franklin felt like betraying Sheila, but I called her every week, sending her little gifts, sketch pads, colored pencils. She'd chatter about her dreams of designing clothes, opening a boutique someday. I graduated top of my class, landed a tech job in San Francisco, and started earning six figures by 25. My promise to Sheila never faded. I sent money home to cover Dad's shop debts, Mom's medical bills, anything they needed. Sheila stayed in Franklin, becoming a first-grade teacher after high school. She loved kids, but her real passion was fashion. She'd text me photos of her designs, her excitement infectious. When Sheila was 22, she met Scott, a steady guy who worked at the local bank. They got engaged fast, and I paid for their small wedding at a Franklin chapel. Sheila glowed in her white dress, and I felt proud, like I was keeping my promise. But cracks started showing. Sheila would call less, her texts shorter. When I visited, she'd tease me about being Miss Big City, her tone sharp. I brushed it off, thinking she was just stressed. She started talking about opening a clothing store, a startup to sell her designs. I was thrilled she was chasing her dream. I didn't hesitate to help, promising to back her financially. It felt like the least I could do for my little sister. Our paths couldn't have been more different. I worked 80-hour weeks coding for a tech giant, living in a sleek San Francisco apartment. Sheila stayed rooted in Franklin, teaching kids, sketching dresses, and building a life with Scott. I admired her for staying close to home, but I couldn't shake the feeling she resented me. During one visit, she rolled her eyes when I offered to buy her a new laptop, saying she didn't need charity. Her words stung, but I told myself it was just her pride. I kept sending money, believing it was my duty. Dad and Mom relied on it too, never saying much, just thanking me quietly. I thought I was holding our family together, keeping my promise. But looking back, I miss the signs, the distance growing between Sheila and me, the way her smiles didn't reach her eyes. By my late 20s, I was often supporting my family, but my generosity began to create tension. Living in San Francisco, I worked brutal hours coding for a tech giant, yet I always made time to send money home to Franklin, Tennessee. My family leaned on me, and I was proud to help. Dad's auto shop had closed years ago, leaving him and Mom scraping by on his pension and her quilt sales. Their house, a small ranch-style place we grew up in, was falling apart, leaky roof, cracked pipes, outdated wiring. When Mom called, voice shaky, saying they couldn't afford repairs, I didn't hesitate. I wired $30,000 to cover a new roof and plumbing upgrades. Dad thanked me over the phone, his words brief, almost formal. I told myself it was just his way, but the calls from home grew rare, maybe once every few months. My sister was another story. Sheila had settled into life as a first-grade teacher, but her real passion was her clothing store dream. She'd send me sketches of dresses, blouses, even scarves, her texts buzzing with excitement. When she decided to launch a boutique in Franklin, I was all in. I sent $20,000 for startup costs and co-signed a $50,000 loan for inventory and rent. I even bought her a shiny new SUV, a sleek black Ford Explorer, to haul supplies and make deliveries. "Elaine, you're a lifesaver," she said when I handed her the keys during a visit. I beamed, thinking we were a team chasing her dream together. Sheila's store, called Thread and Charm, opened on Franklin's Main Street, all exposed brick and soft lighting. She sold her designs, flowy dresses, tailored jackets, mixed with curated pieces from local artisans. Her friend Ellen Foster, who ran a flower shop nearby, helped decorate the place with vibrant bouquets, drawing in crowds. Sheila posted photos online, posing in her creations, captioning them, "Living my dream." I'd like her posts from my San Francisco apartment, proud but too busy to visit often. Ellen Foster started calling Sheila a self-made entrepreneur, and locals ate it up, praising her hustle. I didn't mind, she deserved the spotlight. Or so I thought. But things started shifting. When I flew to Franklin for holidays, Sheila's warmth felt forced. She'd hug me, then make offhand comments. "Miss Big City's back," gracing us with her presence, she'd say, her smile tight. I laughed it off, assuming she was joking, but the digs piled up. Once at a family barbecue, she rolled her eyes when I offered to pay for new patio furniture, saying, "We don't need your charity, Elaine." Her tone wasn't playful, it was sharp, like she resented me. I brushed it aside, figuring she was stressed running the store, but deep down it hurt. I was pouring money into her dream, yet she acted like I was showing off. Mom and Dad weren't much better. They'd thank me for the house repairs or the checks I sent, but our talks were short, mostly about bills. When I suggested visiting more, Mom said, "You're busy, Elaine. We're fine." I wanted to believe her, but their silence felt heavy. Sheila's husband Scott was kind but distant, focused on his bank job, and unaware of how much I was helping. I kept sending money, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, because that's what family does. Right. I thought I was keeping us connected, fulfilling my promise from those tough childhood years. Thread and Charm grew popular with Sheila and Ellen Foster, hosting fashion events that packed the store. Sheila's Instagram glowed with photos of her smiling behind the counter, Ellen Foster by her side, captioned, "Built this from the ground up." I'd comment, "So proud of you," but she rarely replied. Locals started calling her Franklin's rising star, and I was happy for her until I noticed she never mentioned my help. Not once. Ellen Foster's posts echoed the same story, praising Sheila's independent spirit. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need credit. But a nagging feeling grew. She was crafting a narrative that erased me, and the distance between us wasn't just physical anymore. Last month, I returned to my parents' house in Franklin for a family dinner, expecting warmth. It was just a regular Sunday evening, the kind where we'd sit around the dining table, swap stories, and feel like a family again. I'd flown in from San Francisco, my suitcase packed with a special gift, a pair of first-class tickets for a Caribbean cruise, a $10,000 surprise for Mom and Dad's anniversary. I imagined their faces lighting up, maybe even a hug from Sheila. I was wrong. That night, everything I thought I knew about my family unraveled. The table was set with Mom's best dishes, the smell of her pot roast filling the air. Dad sat at the head carving the meat while Sheila chatted about her store. Her husband Scott nodded along, sipping his beer. My cousin Gary, who'd driven over from his auto shop, cracked a joke about the Titans game. I felt a flicker of hope this could be the night we'd reconnect. After we filled our plates, I cleared my throat, ready to share my gift. "Mom, Dad," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "I got you something special for your anniversary." Their eyes flicked to the envelope, but no one smiled. Dad opened it, his face blank. "Cruise tickets," he said, his tone flat, almost annoyed. "Elaine, you think we need your fancy gifts to be happy?" My stomach twisted. Before I could respond, Mom chimed in, her voice sharp. "You're never here, Elaine. You just throw money at us to make up for it." The words stung like a knife, twisting slowly. I looked at Sheila, hoping for backup, but she leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk curling her lips. "She's right," Sheila said, her voice cold. "Nobody needs your money or you." The room went still, the only sound the faint clink of Scott's beer bottle hitting the table. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. My sister's words echoed, each syllable a fresh wound. "Nobody needs you." I wanted to scream, to remind them of the house repairs, the SUV, the loan I'd co-signed for her store. But my throat tightened and no words came. I scanned the table, searching for an ally. Scott stared at his plate, his jaw tight, avoiding my gaze. Gary shifted in his seat, picking at his napkin, his eyes anywhere but on me. The silence was suffocating, their rejection louder than any shout. I felt like an outsider in my own family, a stranger at the table I'd helped pay for. "Sheila." I managed my voice, barely a whisper. "Why would you say that?" She shrugged, her smirk unwavering. "It's the truth, Elaine. You think your cash makes you part of this family? You're barely here." Dad nodded, his expression hard. "We've managed without you before," he said. "We don't need you showing off." Mom didn't speak, but her tight lips said enough. Each word was a blow, tearing down years of sacrifice. I'd spent a decade keeping them afloat, yet here they were, spitting in my face. My hands shook as I set my fork down. I could have fought back, listed every dollar I'd sent, every bill I'd covered. But what was the point? They'd made up their minds. I was the rich sister who didn't belong. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their judgment. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the quiet. "I need some air," I said, my voice trembling. No one stopped me. Scott kept his eyes on his plate. Gary fiddled with his glass, and Sheila just stared, her smirk now a full grin. I grabbed my coat and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me. The cool Tennessee night hit my face, but it couldn't numb the pain. I stood on the porch alone, their words burning in my chest. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew I couldn't let this go. The next morning, a call from my friend Ellen Cook changed everything. I was still reeling, holed up in a Franklin hotel room, the sting of last night's dinner replaying in my head. My phone buzzed, and Ellen's name lit up the screen. She wasn't one to call out of the blue. She'd been my best friend since high school. Always blunt, always real. "Elaine," she said, her voice tight. "You need to check Sheila's Instagram. It's bad." My heart sank. I didn't want to believe it, but after last night, I knew something was off. "What did she do?" I asked, bracing myself. Ellen hesitated, then said, "She's been lying. About everything." I opened Instagram, my hands trembling as I scrolled through Sheila's profile. Her latest post was a photo of her standing in thread and charm, arms spread wide, captioned, "Built this empire from nothing. Self-made and proud." The comments were a flood of praise from Franklin locals. shop owners, neighbors, even her old high school teachers. Inspiring one wrote. Proof you don't need handouts to succeed, another gushed. My stomach churned. Handouts I'd poured $20,000 into her startup, co-signed a $50,000 loan, bought her an SUV. Every word of her self-made story was a lie, and she'd been selling it to the whole town. I scrolled further, finding post after post, claiming she'd done it all alone. One photo showed her with her friend Ellen Foster, both smiling, captioned dream chasers who don't need anyone's help. I called Ellen back, my voice shaking. How long has this been going on? Ellen sighed. A couple years, Elaine. She and Ellen Foster have been pushing this narrative since the store opened. Everyone in Franklin thinks Sheila's some kind of hero. I felt sick, the betrayal cutting deeper than last night's insults. Ellen Foster, Sheila's cheerleader, was complicit, hyping up the lie at every turn. I remembered her flower shop, how she'd decorated thread and charm, always tagging Sheila as the independent queen. I'd thought they were just close friends, but now it felt like a calculated performance, erasing my role entirely. Needing answers, I called my cousin Gary. He'd been at the dinner, silent, when Sheila and my parents tore into me. Gary, I said, did you know about this? He paused, then admitted. Yeah, I heard rumors. Sheila's been telling people she funded the store herself, saying you just chip in sometimes. I didn't want to stir things up. His words hit hard. For years, Sheila had painted me as a distant sister who tossed scraps while she took credit for my sacrifices. Gary added, she's been doing it so long folks believe it. Even Scott thinks she's self-made. My sister's husband didn't even know the truth. The lie had spread like wildfire, and I'd been blind to it. I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up my financial records, my pulse racing. The SUV, that black Ford Explorer I'd bought for Sheila, was still in my name. I'd never transferred the title, thinking it was just a formality. The loan for Thread and Charm, I was the co-signer, legally tied to every payment. I'd been covering the monthly installments, $10,000 a month, while Sheila played the self-made star. The realization hit like a punch. I held the keys to her empire. She'd built her reputation on my money, then humiliated me in front of our family. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a public lie flaunted for all of Franklin to see. I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the glowing laptop screen, my anger growing. Sheila hadn't just hurt me at dinner. She'd been rewriting our story for years, erasing my sacrifices to boost her ego. Ellen Foster's posts, the town's applause, Gary's silence, it all added up to a truth I couldn't ignore. My sister didn't just resent me. She'd built her success on a foundation of deception. I closed my laptop, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but one thing was clear. Sheila's lie wasn't going to stand. Not anymore. By the second day, my hurt turned into resolve. I was done being the silent sister, the one who paid for everything while Sheila rewrote my sacrifices as her own. Sitting in my Franklin hotel room, I opened my laptop and called my company's lawyer, Karen Walsh, in San Francisco. I'd worked with her on contract disputes before she was sharp, no nonsense, and knew her way around paperwork. Karen, I said, my voice steady, I need to know my rights on some assets I own in Tennessee. I explained the SUV and the loan for Sheila's store, how they were still in my name. Karen was quiet for a moment, then said, Elaine, you're the legal owner of the vehicle, and as co-signer you can stop payments on the loan. It's straightforward. Her words lit a fire in me. I wasn't just angry, I was ready to act. First, I tackled the SUV. That black Ford Explorer I'd bought for Sheila wasn't hers, not legally. I called the dealership in Franklin where I'd purchased it, explaining I was the titled owner and wanted it repossessed. The manager hesitated, but once I emailed the title documents, he agreed to send a tow truck. Do you want to keep it? He asked. No, I said firmly. Sell it. Send me the proceeds. It felt cold, calculating, but I didn't care. Sheila had driven that car, flaunting her self-made image, while I paid the insurance and taxes. Within hours, I got confirmation the SUV was towed from her driveway that afternoon. I pictured her confusion the moment she realized her prized possession was gone, and a bitter satisfaction settled in. Next, I addressed the loan. As co-signer for Sheila's $50,000 loan for Thread and Charm, I'd been covering the monthly payments $10,000 a month without a second thought. Karen sent me a draft letter to the bank stating I'd no longer make payments. I signed it digitally and emailed it to the loan officer, my heart pounding. The bank confirmed receipt, warning that missed payments would trigger default notices to Sheila. I knew what that meant. Her store, her pride and joy would start crumbling without my money. It wasn't just about the cash. It was about dismantling the lie she'd built on my back. With the legal steps in motion, I turned to Sheila. I didn't want a screaming match or a tearful confrontation. Instead, I typed a message, my fingers steady on my phone. Sheila, I know about your lies. I've stopped paying for the loan and the SUV's gone. I'm done funding your story. Good luck. I hit send, watched the message deliver, and then blocked her number. No reply, no argument, just silence. It was the cleanest cut I could make. She'd humiliated me in front of our family, erased my contributions, and now she'd face the consequences. I blocked her on Instagram too, severing the last thread tying me to her world. Days later, whispers started reaching me, even from San Francisco. Ellen, my friend, texted me screenshots from Franklin's community pages. Thread and Charm was in trouble. The bank had sent Sheila a default notice for the overdue loan payments, and locals were buzzing about it. One post on a community board read, "Heard Sheila's store is struggling, guess her self-made story hit a wall." I didn't smile, but I felt a weight lift. Sheila's empire built on my money, and her lies was faltering. Customers stopped coming as often, and her Instagram posts grew sparse, no longer filled with glowing captions about success. The truth was catching up, and I didn't have to say a word to make it happen. I sat back in my hotel room, staring at my phone. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now, replaced by a strange calm. I'd taken control, not with tears or shouting, but with cold, deliberate steps. Sheila had wanted to paint me as irrelevant, but I'd shown her exactly how much she'd relied on me. For the first time in years, I felt free, not from my family, but from the burden of their expectations. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew I'd face it on my terms. A week later, Franklin was buzzing with talk about Sheila's downfall. Thread and Charm, her so-called self-made empire, had shut its doors for good. The bank had seized the storefront after Sheila failed to pay the overdue loan, a direct result of me stopping the monthly payments. I didn't need to be in Tennessee to know the town was whispering. Local message boards were flooded with posts about the closure. One shop owner wrote, "Thought Sheila was a success story. Guess not." Another neighbor commented, "All that talk about doing it alone, and now this." Her reputation, once polished by lies, was crumbling under the weight of the truth. I felt no joy, only a quiet vindication that her deception had finally caught up with her. Back in Franklin, the fallout reached Sheila's marriage. Scott, her husband, had learned the truth not from me, but from the same gossip that spread through town. He confronted Sheila about her lies, about how she'd claimed Thread and Charm was her own, while I'd been bankrolling it. Ellen, my friend, sent me a text. "Scott's furious. He's staying at his brother's place." Their marriage, already strained, was cracking under the pressure. I imagined Scott's disbelief, realizing his wife had built their life on a facade. Part of me wondered if he'd ever look at her the same way again. But I didn't dwell on it. It wasn't my burden to carry anymore. My parents, Dad and Mom, didn't take kindly to my actions. My phone buzzed with voicemails from them, their voices sharp with blame. "Elaine, how could you do this to your sister?" Dad said in one message. "You've ruined her life," Mom added in another. Their words stung, but they didn't surprise me. They'd always taken Sheila's side, even when she humiliated me at that dinner. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a single text to both. "I gave everything for years. Sheila lied, not me. I'm done explaining." I hit send and blocked their numbers, just as I'd done with Sheila. I wasn't going to argue or beg for their understanding. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. I boarded a flight back to San Francisco the next day, the Tennessee skyline fading behind me. Back in my apartment, I deleted every trace of Franklin from my phone photos, old texts, social media ties. I unfollowed the community pages and blocked anyone who might pull me back into that world. My life in San Francisco felt different now, sharper, like I'd shed a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I threw myself into new projects at the tech firm and started saying yes to invitations I'd ignored for years, dinners with colleagues, weekend hikes, even a pottery class I'd always wanted to try. For the first time, I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. Looking back, I saw the lesson clearly. I'd spent years tying my worth to my family's needs, thinking my sacrifices would earn their love. But love can't be bought, and loyalty can't be forced. Sheila's lies. My parents' blame they showed me that giving everything doesn't guarantee respect. I learned to draw a line to value myself enough to walk away. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was survival. As I sat in my apartment, sunlight streaming through the window, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Franklin was behind me, and I was ready to build a life that was mine alone.